system 嗰份嘢交嗰份assignment交。12月10號，11月10號，我知就交喎。係啊，唔知點解我 remind 咗好多次，佢話今個禮拜內一定俾到，會 upload 上，唔知咩？知道你未教到唔知咧？咦，醒我噃！未教到，所以唔好咁快俾你住啊！唔係，我都話我 lecture 聽我先講，即係費事有個咁嘅 implication。我以前就係試過咁，啲人估到，即係我過咗某個 lecture 我先講嗰個 assignment，佢咪估到我係即係之前嗰啲未及法，佢咪估得係後面嗰啲嘢，所以以後全部擺喺最尾。幫你留意咗啊！唔係，同埋反正你仲有成個月嗰個數，即係你斷估你都做埋，唔係斷估你都做埋第一份先咯，呢個事實應該係啊，係咪先？你冇理由做咗我份，咁又唔使㗎喎。我點都叫佢今個禮拜內一定要擺上，我講好多次我，但我 lesson 10先講，不過就你早啲俾佢望一望啦。咁佢話得，佢話今個禮拜內，唔知係咪可能個 program director未睇，理論上佢要望一望，雖然99%佢唔會改任何嘢，so far我都未改過任何嘢，但係佢手續上佢要睇，可能佢未睇，我懷疑係佢要睇一睇 approve 咗佢先擺上，但係基本上應該唔會有嘢改。先講。好難 lecture， 即係今個禮拜，即係最遲都係星期六俾你。咁星期六即係 lecture 8，係咪？lecture 8星期六即係 lecture 8。咁 lecture 10先講，你仲有成2個禮拜去睇完。跟住我哋今個禮拜之後，跟住就係4同2㗎嘛，我記得好似係一個禮拜變翻一堂。即係今個禮拜好密嘅3堂，跟住下禮拜同再下禮拜都係1堂嘅。所以如果今個禮拜俾到你，咁我哋最後會頭先講，即係你有足差唔多2個星期去睇嗰份，所以一定夠時。今個禮拜係幾多？Okay, before we start the class, so far can you follow? Because we finished already 50%. Lecture 6, right? So we only have 10 lectures for teaching. So we are halfway on it. 50% already finished. So far, you okay? Can you follow? All right, that's good. All right. Okay, so we sidetrack. So let's have a very quick revision on lecture 5 first. Before we start lecture 6. So, any of you remember? Any of you still remember what we learned in lecture 5? What we learned in lecture 5? So, I mean, one very important document. Very important document. Article, right. Yes, correct. What's the article? Philip. Right, so it's a constitution. Constitution, correct. What it implies for as a constitution, what it means. For what? Why we need to have constitution? Yeah, govern what? Governing what?
The operation of the company.
Operation of the company. Almost correct, but you can be more precise. Internal matters, right? I would say internal matters. So think about constitution, right? Think about basic law. So it governs internal matters, right? Not for diplomacy, right? Not for other countries, but internal matters. And also the composition of the company, right? Compositions, structure. Okay. Do you remember the example I used? Can you buy a banana from Quangong? Do you remember that example? Why I asked a question like this? What I want to know from that question? What I want to know from that question? Well, I'm not really interested in buying banana. Right? I don't really care about it's Quangong or HSBC or Bank of China. But something I want to know from that question. Something I want you to know, right? Something I want you to know. We learned a very important concept in lecture 5. Apart from the articles, of course, right? Article, Constitution. So we learned something very important concept. Something we call object course, right? Object course, right? Object course or objective. Somehow the same thing, right? Object course. So what's object course? What's object course? What is it? So object course is like the purpose, right? The purpose in setting up the company. So if you have object course, it means that your company being established for a particular purpose, for property development, for biotechnology, for retail, for manufacturing, right? So if you stated a purpose in the article, then your company will be bound by that objective. So it means that when you sign a contract, beyond that purpose, that contract may not valid, right? Okay, is it necessary to have object course nowadays? Not necessary, remember, except for certain industries. For example, if you are a bank, right? Well, a bank is a company, right? A bank is a company. For example, banking or trust or something else that I can recall, right? But only for certain industry. So otherwise, an object course is no longer necessary, right? No longer necessary, but I'm not saying that you cannot have it. You can still have object course. So if you still have object course, then you should follow. Why? Because if you are not following the object course, the members of your company, I mean the shareholders of the company, can apply for a court order to stop your decision. I mean the decision of the directors, right? Not to do something against the object course. But it is only internal matters. Right? Do you remember that? Very important concept. Once the third party being involved, even something beyond the object course already committed by the company. But that behavior, that action, right, that decision, still valid. Because outside party shall not be bound by the object course. Because the object course
is only internal method. Just like an American, right? A Japanese shall not be bound by any provision in the basic law, because they are not a resident in Hong Kong, right? So the same concept here. Unless, for one thing, you have actual notice. Do you remember a very important concept in common law? Something we call actual notice. Actual notice, it means you are already notified for something. For example, if you are the third party, right, before you sign any contract with the company send you a letter, send you an email to remind you that this company can only sign any contract related to property development. So if that is the case, right, you are having actual notice on the obstacles of this company, then you cannot argue that I know nothing about your internal matters, because you are already notified, all right? But except for that, right? Except for that, normally a third party will not be bound by obstacles, right? Okay, so that's what we learned in lecture 5. Let's start lecture 6. Another very important concept we have to learn regarding the company, shares capital. Right? But before that, right, before I explain to you what we mean by shares capital, so I want to ask you a question. Shares capital, right? Two different words here. Is it a single concept, or there are two concepts here? Is it shares capital as a single concept, or shares and capital? And they are different. How do you think? In Chinese, shares capital, 五本. All right, okay. Is it one thing or two things? Is it one or two? Two. You think they are different? You think that shares and capital, they are different? How about the others? Do any of you think that it's one single concept? Is it one single concept? Or there are two different things here? Do you understand my question? Right, shares capital. Is it one or two legal concepts here? Is it one thing or two things? Okay, before I give you an answer, right? What I mean by shares capital? I have to remind you one more time, right? One more time. There are 5 different kinds of company. We already learned that. But as I told you before, we focus on private company limited by shares. All right. So starting from this lecture, and even in the assignment or in examinations, unless otherwise stated, we are dealing with a private company limited by shares, right? Because if you are looking at the statistics of the Hong Kong company registry, so over 93% of the companies in Hong Kong, they are private company limited by shares, right? So it means that that's the kind of company you will deal with, normally in your daily life, right? In daily operations. Okay, so we assume that we are dealing with a private company limited by shares. We look at this diagram. So this is all about the structures, the share capital of a private company limited by shares. So what kind of information we have here? Any of you remember the definition of a shareholder? And what the definition of director? A shareholder is a person to own a company. So shareholders, they are owners, right? Yes. And how about directors? They manage the company, and they are the manager, right? They are the manager. So shareholders, they own the company. So how does shareholder own the company? You look at here. You have a company limited by shares, right? It means that the company, the ownership of the company will be divided depending on how many shares you have. To make it simple, right? To make it simple. For example, in this company, this company have 100 shares, right? 100 shares. So it means that this company will be divided into 100 different parts. So if you are one of the owners, for example, Mr. A, right? Mr. A. So Mr. A owns 40 shares, 40 shares. So it means that his ownership will be 40%. But very simple mathematics here, right? Very simple. Right. And what we mean by shares capital? Shares capital, it means that when you issue a share, when a company issues a share, it must have a value on that share, right? So make it simple again. For example, in this company, ABC Limited, I suppose that the value of each share is $1, right? $1. And this company issue 100 shares. So the share capital will be $100. Again, right? Very simple mathematics, simple calculations. So this is what we call shares capital. Okay. I suppose you understand, right? Quite easy. I ask you again, shares capital, is it one thing or two things here? Is it one or two things? Is it one single concept or two different legal concepts? Shares capital. Well, remember that, right? When you have a question like this, you have to learn the way of how a lawyer responds to the questions, right? So normally you have an answer like this. It depends. Right? It depends. You have to learn to think like a lawyer, right? And that's the typical answer from the lawyer. When you ask a lawyer for something, the answer will be, it depends, right? It depends. Okay, it depends. It depends on what? It depends on your perspective, right? Why? Shares capital. What's shares capital? I suppose you understand, right? It means that the number of shares times the value of each share. So that will be shares capital. Okay, exactly what you say. Regarding the definition, it depends on your perspective. Remember, a company is a separate legal person, right? So a company is a separate legal entity. So from the perspective of a company, what I mean by share capital? Number one, it refers to portion of ownership, right? Ownership. Mr. A owns 40 shares, B 30 shares, Mr. C 30 shares. 40 shares mean 40%. But to a company, it's not the most important. Most important point is that the funds one paid off by the shareholder will become the capital. It means asset of a company. When Mr. A owns 40 shares, right? It means 40% ownership. But why Mr. A can own 40% of this company? Because Mr. A needs to pay $40 in order to become a member, shareholder or owner, right? So once the money paid to the money, it becomes capital of the company. It becomes asset of the company. So if you are from the perspective of a company, shares capital is somehow a capital, an asset, money that can be used by the company, right? So once you pay off, the cash belongs to the company, and the company can use it. Remember, right? The company is not borrowing money from the shareholder. The company is not borrowing money from you. So once you pay and then you get the shares, and you cannot ask the money back normally, right? Because the money becomes the capital of the company, something like the asset of a company, right? That can be used by the company. Okay. How about shareholder? How about shareholder? To the shareholder, what it means? Your investment, right? Your investment, because you pay for it. As a shareholder, you pay. Use an example of Mr. A again. You pay $40 and you get 40 shares. So what you're doing here, you're investing in this company, right? But most importantly, it refers to your ownership, because you own a certain percentage of this company. It also concerns your right and liability. So something we are going to learn about later, right, in the coming pages. So if you are shareholders, the shares capital is somehow more like shares. What I mean by shares? You are sharing a certain percentage in this company. Sharing, right? Sharing. For the case of Mr. A, sharing 40%. So you can share. Not sharing, share. Right? So Mr. A share 40% of this company. So it means you own a certain percentage of this company. So let's sum it up again. It's one or two things. If you're outsider, right? If you're outsider, if you're auditor, if you're outsider, if you're the business partner of this company, or if you're a potential investor, or if you're the bank, you're accessing the financial information of this company, then shares capital is one thing. Right? It's a one single concept, because it means that how many shares being issued, so how many money being gathered by the investor, how much being paid by the investors. But from the perspective of the company, shares capital somehow more like capital, it's an asset. And if you're shareholders, it's something more like ownership. You share certain percentage in this company. All right? Okay, so that's the starting point regarding shares capital. We have to spend a few minutes to learn about history. So I hope that you still remember we have two pieces of legislation regarding company law: the old company ordinance and the old company ordinance and the new company ordinance. Right? We have two pieces of legislation. So let's take a look at the old one first. You have to understand something we call share capital structure. We have two numbers here, right? How many shares you need to issue? If you want to understand shares capital, you have to understand some variables. So number one, how many shares being issued, right? How many shares being issued? And how much for every single share? The value of each share. So there are two variables we have to know. But where are they come from? Right, where they come from? If I want to establish a new company, right? BBB company, I have to determine the shares capital structure by making a decision on two variables. Number one, how many shares to issue? Right? How many shares to issue? Number one. And value on each share. So you need to have the two variables before you can understand the shares capital structure, right? For example, if 100 shares being issued, and each of it $1, then the shares capital will be, 100. So you always need to make decision on how many shares to issue and the value of each single share, all right? So you need to make a decision. But I want to ask you questions. Where do they come from? How do we make a decision on it? Why is it 100 but not 200? Can I issue 1,000? Can I issue 1 million? So how about the value of each share. Why is $1? Is it possible to be $2? Is it possible to be $10? And what the difference? Or any rules regarding my determinations on this number? Right? Do you remember? Do you understand that? Because we have to make a decision on it. So how to make decision? Any rules here? Because we are studying law, so we have to understand the rules, right? So what are the rules here? Do we have any rules regarding all these numbers? 有冇規則呢? Any rules? Yes. Yes. So there are some rules we have to follow, right? So let's take a look at old day first. Because you have to remember the new company ordinance came into effect on 2014. So it means that before 2014, all the companies are being incorporated under the old company ordinance. So when you are dealing with a company, so very likely that you may still, doing business, the company being incorporated in the old days and under the old company ordinance. So you have to understand why they have a capital structure like this, right? So let's take a look at the old days. Shares capital structures under the old company ordinance. So under the old company ordinance, Cap 32, a company must stipulate two factors in order to determine the capital structures. So number one, authorized share capital. Number two, par value of each share. What I mean by authorized share capital? What I mean by authorized share capital? It means a boundary, right? A boundary or a maximum. So under the old company ordinance, when you determine the capital structures, the first thing you have to determine, authorized share capital, it means the maximum. The maximum funds that you can raise by issuing shares. So that's the definition of authorized share capital. So you set the authorized share capital as $100. So it means that, right? It means that your company can only raise funds not more than $100 by issuing shares. You get my point here, right? Because what's the purpose in issuing shares? Raise funds. So you set the authorized share capital at 100. So the maximum will be 100. So this is the first number you have to determine in the old days, right? In the old days. And then another number, which is the par value of each share. Par value. It means the value of each share. The par value. Right? So if the par value is $1, then what happens? How many shares you can issue? 100, right? If the par value is $10, how many shares you can issue? 10, right? So you understand that. So that's the old day, right? So that's the old day. It means under the old company ordinance before 2014. Below the second paragraph. So remember that the authorized share capital is the maximum value of share capital. Maximum, right? So you cannot issue more than that. And then the par value is the inherent value of each share. So once we determine the two factors, then we can come up with a greater number, and that is the authorized share capital total, right? It's a very simple formula here. But you may still want to ask a question. how to make decision on this number and how to make decision on the par value. Any rule or any guidelines? Any rules and any guidelines regarding this number and this number, the par value and the authorized share capital? Can I set 200, 1,000, 1 million, 1 billion? So how about this one? $1, $2, $3, $20, $100. Any rules here? Any rules here? The answer is no. It is arbitrary. It's arbitrary, all right? So it means that don't mix up. If you ever learn about accounting, I think you understand. But if you don't, maybe you will mix up. Because the numbers here, right, and the numbers here, regarding the par value, they have nothing to do with the real value of this company. It means that if I set this number to be 100, it doesn't mean that your company really worth $100. Right. For example, if you have a desk here, right? If you have a desk here, the desk worth $100, then you set the number as $100. No. Your company may have nothing at all. Your company owns nothing, right? Or the company only have $1 in the bank account, but you can still set the number as 100, and the par value can be $1. Or you can set the authorized share capital as 1 million, and then for the par value, 1,000. Still possible. This number is arbitrary. It means all to you, right? So don't mix up. So because in the old days, some people try to take advantage from this formula or from this number. So try to fool the lay person. Well, take a look at the capital structure here, right? The authorized share capital of my company is $5 million. And the par value of the shares in this company is 1 million, right? So $5 million as authorized share capital, and every single share, the par value of every single share is 1 million. So take a look, right? It's a really good company. But that may be nonsense, right? Because this number is arbitrary. This number is arbitrary. If you set the authorized share capital as $1 million or $1 billion, and then divide it into many different shares, then at the end, you may only issue one share only. So it doesn't mean that your company is really having the cash or the asset of this number here, right? You set the authorized share capital as 100 and to be divided into 100 shares. Maybe at the end you only issued one share. So it means that your share capital is only $1. So this number may be misleading, right? But that's the old day. That's the old day. In the old days, you always need to make decisions on authorized share capitals. But how about the present day, right? So what happened under the new company ordinance? So under Cap 622, the new company ordinance, right? It means nowadays. So under the new company ordinance, a company no longer needs to state the par value of a share, and no longer need to specify the authorized share capitals. No, you don't have to, right? So what's the difference between the old days and the present day? So in the old days, number one, right? Number one, when you set the authorized share capitals, so what's the difference between the old days and the present days? In the old days, when you set the authorized share capital, so that's the maximum. It means that your company cannot raise funds by issuing shares more than this number, right? But under the new company ordinance, we don't have such a limit, because you don't have to set the authorized share capital. So provided that someone is willing to pay and to buy your shares and to willing to become a member of your company, then you can keep raising funds by issuing shares. Because you don't have a maximum here under the new company rules, right? Another difference, in old days when you set the par value, for example, $10, right? Under old days, in the old company ordinance, when the par value is $10, it means that when you issue shares, the share issues cannot be lower than $10. It can be more, right? You can issue at $20, then you are going to have a shares premium. But at least you cannot issue any shares lower than this number, lower than the par value. But under the new company ordinance, you don't have to set par value. It means that you have complete freedom in setting the value of each share in every different issues. So it means that you can issue share on January, each share worth $10. On June, you can issue shares, and each share worth $20. And then on November again, you issue shares again, and this time $100 for every single share. Because nowadays we don't have any par value at all, right? So you can have a bigger number, or you can have a small number. Small number. I'll give you an example. You can issue shares on January for $10 each share, and then on June, you can issue shares for $5 for each share. Because nowadays we don't have par value, right? We don't have inherent value, so you can issue shares at any price you like, provided that if someone willing to pay for it, right? So forget about authorized share capital and forget about par value under the new company ordinance. But you have to understand what it means by authorized share capital and par value, because all the companies incorporated before 2014, right? They follow the old rules. So when you check their corporate documents, so you have to understand, what happened in their company, right? With their old company, right? Old company being established under the old rules. So remember, under the new company ordinance, a company is free to issue any number of shares at any value, subject only to restriction in the article. Something like the object code, right? Something like the object code. So it means that right nowadays we don't have any limitation regarding how much money you can raise by issuing shares, and we don't have any restriction regarding the value on every single share. But if you like it, right, you can, include some restrictions in the article, but that's not compulsory by law. It's up to you. So it means that you can still have some kind of restriction. You can set a limit in this company, not to raise funds for more than $2 million, right? So you can have such a restriction, but that is not required under the company ordinance, right? So that's the main difference between old days and the present day. For a company incorporated under the old company ordinance, all provision regarding par value and authorized share capital will be deemed to be deleted or cancelled. So it means that, right? It means that even your company being incorporated before 2014, in the old days under the old company ordinance and under the old rules. So under the old rules, it means that you have authorized share capital and you have the par value. But under the new company ordinance, so once the new company ordinance became effective on 2014, so all these restrictions will be deemed to be deleted. So you can, right, nowadays, even your company being incorporated 100 years ago under the old rules, but you can ignore authorized share capital. You can ignore par value. You can issue any number of shares you like, right? So the law states that all the old restrictions will be deemed to be removed, right? So you can ignore. But you still have to understand. Because if you are looking at the articles of the old company, maybe the authorized share capital is still here, right? Some provision still stipulated the authorized share capital. and the article still have something we call as a power value. So I want you to understand what it means, right? But don't worry about it, because under the new company ordinance, they are no longer effective. So now you can issue any shares, any number of shares, to raise, to raise money without any limitation. And we don't have power value. So you can issue shares at any price you like, right? You can make it a bigger number, small number, up and down. Okay, right? Provided someone is willing to pay for it. Right? So that is the present day. Okay. So how about the classes of share capital? The different classes of share capital. So any of you ever heard about something like A share or B share? A 股, B 股, ordinary shares, parent shares, 股東股, 優先股. Right? I'm sure that even you never study company law, right? Even you know nothing about company law, if you are working and if you get money, you once invested in the stock market, or even just for common sense, right? I'm sure that you once heard about that. A share, B share, ordinary shares, parent shares, right? So what it means? It means that when a company issues shares, the company can issue different class of shares. Or what I mean by different class, it means different kinds of shares, right? Different kinds of shares. And you know that there are different kinds of shares. And you heard about some of their names. But probably you don't really understand what it stands for, right? What it means. Well, what is A share? What's a B share? What I mean by ordinary shares? What I mean by parent shares? Do you think that we have a definition in the company ordinance regarding all this stuff? So, do you think that we have a definition in the company ordinance in saying that if you offer, if you issue ordinary shares, it means that you are offering a share, something like this, right? Or when you issue parent shares, it means that you are issuing something like 1, 2, and 3, and 4. Do you think that we have a definition in the company ordinance regarding the different class of shares? The answer is no, we don't have. Well, first, do you understand what I mean by different kinds of shares? You understand, right? Different kinds of shares. A company can issue different kinds of shares. Right? Different kinds of shares. But I can tell you that if you look at the company ordinance, you cannot find any definitions regarding the different kinds of shares. Right? No, we don't have. Right? No. If you don't believe me, you can try, right? You can try. No definition regarding the definition of the different kinds of shares. So where do they come from? Why we have a name like B share or A share or parent shares, ordinary shares? Where do they come from? Maybe, right? Maybe. But why we have different names here? Can I name my share to be D share or K share or I share? Yes. You can name your share in whatever way you like. Because when you look at the company ordinance, we only find one provision regarding the definition on the different kinds of shares. And that's what being stated in paragraph 1. Right? We look at it. So very important concept here. Your section 178, subsection 1 states that shares are in one class if the right attached to them are in all respects uniform. And that's the only provisions in the company ordinance to define the different kinds of shares. So what it means? Something I highlight in paragraph 1. What it means? You see that, right? The company ordinance never exactly define every single kind of share. No. The company ordinance say one thing. If the right, of that shares is the same, and that belong to the same class of share. Let's think about employment, right? Think about employment. Do you understand what we mean by a HR manager, a human resources manager. Do you understand what we mean by financial controller? Do you understand what we mean by accounting manager? Do you understand what we mean by IT manager? You understand, right? So you understand, if someone being named as an HR manager, so you somehow understand what will be her work duties to take care of the personal staff promotion, right? Resignations, or to fire, someone underperformance in the company. So we know something about it when you heard about the job title. But do you think that when you look at the company employment ordinance, do you think that there are any definitions regarding the job titles? No, right? You can check the employment ordinance. The employment ordinance never define any job title. But the employment ordinance is having a definition something like this. Something like the company ordinance, section 178, subsection 1. In the company ordinance, in the employment ordinance, it states that if you are doing the same kind of work, then you are the same kind of employee. You get my point here, right? If you are doing the same thing, then the employment ordinance will treat all of them the same kind of employee. But the employment ordinance never define what we mean by HR manager. Even by common sense, we understand, right? The law never defines what you have to do as an HR manager. And that's the same for company ordinance. Because in the company ordinance states that when the right attached to the share is the same, then you are the same. So it will be something like this. We look at the share here, right? We have two share issues. So in these shares, they have right 1, 2, and 3. Right 1, 2, and 3. In these shares, only right. In these shares, only right 1. So the law, the definition based on the company ordinance will be they belong to same kind, maybe A, and this belong to B. All right? But how you exactly name this as A or B or X or Y or ordinary shares or parent shares, up to you. You get my point here. All right? So remember that that's a very important concept in company ordinance or in company law. So when the right of the shares are the same, then they belong to the same class of shares. But the company ordinance never actually define what it means for when you are having a particular name here. Because you can name the shares in whatever way you like, right? So you can name this kind of shares as A or B or C or D or X or Y. It's up to you, right? It doesn't matter. Because the company ordinance will never define a particular kind of shares. But there's only one thing we have to care about, and that's the right attached to each kind of shares. If they are the same, then they belong to the same class of shares. So I hope that you bear in mind, and that's very important. So what are the rights that can be attached to the shares? Can you think of any right? Any right that can be attached to, included in the shares? Below the second paragraph, dividends or right to voting, right? Very typical. Or even dividends, 股息, a sharing from the profit based on your shareholding. if the company made a profit of $100 and you own 40%, so you suppose you're entitled to $40. There's something we call dividend, right? It means you're sharing all of the profit. So that's a very important right as a shareholder. And there can be other rights. For example, for voting, right? Under what kind of situation you can vote. Because when you own a share in a company, apart from, as an investment, another main concern will be your right in this company. What you can do, right? If I own 40%, then what can I do in this company? If I own 50%, what it means, right? What kind of right I can exercise in this company? So that some right attached to the shares. So why we need to have different kinds of shares? Why we need to have different kinds of shares? Why not just one? Why we have different kinds of shares? We have different kinds of shares. If the company want to target on what? Different investor, right? Because different investor, they may have different purpose in acquiring your shares. So some of them concern about the return, the dividends. So some of them want to acquire shares because they want to control the company, right? Because they have many different reasons. So some of them own the shares because they want to have an bonus payment. But you heard about it, sometimes when you are senior staff of the company, then the company will issue some shares to you.
Share options.
Right, share option. So you can own some shares. But I don't think that staff intended to control the company. Right? Because the shares you own, by comparing with the major shareholders, that will be, it's not really substantial. It's not really material. So you are not caring about the control, but you care about the payment. Because when you own the shares, you're entitled to, a higher payment, right? You get more money, you get more cash. So why we have different kinds of shares? Because there are many different purposes for the investor to subscribe shares. They may have different reasons to become a member of this company. So if you want to have more members, if you want to have more shareholders, then you have to tailor-make sometimes, right? You have to tailor-make that particular class of shares in order to get their money, right? And that's the reason. And that's the reason we have different class of shares. And that's the reason we have different kinds of shares, right? Okay. So I told you already, right? I told you already. The company ordinance. That's very important, remember, right? That's very important. You always bear in mind, the company ordinance never exactly define any particular kind of shares. Never define. But there are names, right, that we always heard about. Ordinary shares, pen shares, right, redeemable shares. The company ordinance never defines what mean by ordinary shares. The company ordinance never defines what mean by pen shares. But it doesn't mean that we have no ideas for what it means. Because when you adopt a name like this, right, normally in the commercial world, or at least under the common law jurisdictions, it means something. So when two companies, company A and company B, so both companies issue some shares where they call it ordinary shares. What we get from it, we can say that they are the same, right? We can say that they are the same because we don't have a universal definition in the company ordinance. So even something we call ordinary shares, something issued in company A and company B may not be exactly the same, but I'm sure that they are what? Similar, right? So if someone being employed in company A as an HR manager, and someone also being employed in company B, also as an HR manager, so you can say that they are working on exactly the same thing, 100%, right? No, you can't. Because the employment ordinance never define a job title. But use your common sense. Use your common sense. If someone with the same title, even they are working in different company, somehow they are working on, they're having similar work duties. I think that's reasonable, right? And that's also the same for the different kinds of shares. So, hereby I try to explain to you some of the names that always being used by the company to classify the different kinds of shares, right? For example, ordinary shares, parent shares. So a company issue ordinary shares, no matter in company A or company B or company C or company D. So I'm sure that they are similar. So otherwise, they don't use the name ordinary shares. So otherwise, they don't use the name parent shares. Because when you use the name ordinary shares, it implies something, right? Implies something to the potential investor. When you post an advertisement for recruitment, when you want to recruit a CFO, right? So I'm not saying that CFO in your company will do exactly the same thing as in other company, right? I'm not saying that. But when you try to recruit, when you try to hire a CFO, the message you convey to the job market, right? Is that I'm recruiting someone to take care of the financial stuff. Because that's reasonable. So you are not going to recruit a CFO to clean the toilet, right? That's unreasonable. So when companies issue ordinary shares, even they are not, you cannot be certain. Ordinary shares in company A and B and C are exactly the same. But I'm quite sure that they are similar, right? So it means that we can still understand something when the company uses a particular name in that particular class of shares. So let's try to understand some of the names that always being used by the company. So let's start from ordinary shares, right? The first one, ordinary shares. So what I mean by ordinary shares? What I mean by ordinary shares? It means they're ordinary. They're 好普通, right? So what I mean, right? So it means they're not special, right? Ordinary means they're not special. So what I mean by ordinary shares? Normally, it refers to the basic and primary form of shares in the company. So if 100 shares being issued by a company, and this company also issue ordinary shares, normally the case will be around 60%, 70%, or even 80% of the shares being issued belong to this kind as ordinary shares, right? Normally, remember, right? Normally, because it refers to the basic and primary form of shares. So when you subscribe, or when you bought the ordinary shares, it means that you do not have any guarantee for fixed level of dividends, right? When you subscribe for ordinary shares, there will be no guarantee for dividends, right? No guarantee. Even the company is making profit. Even the company is making profit. You don't have guaranteed income. Because don't mix up, right? Don't mix up. Because I always use the example, when a company made a profit for $100, and then you own 40% of shares, then you expect that you can share $40. Maybe, but not necessarily. Because the issuance of dividends, number one, depends on what kind of shares you hold, right? And number two, the issuance of dividend is always a decision of the board of directors. Because the board of directors, they can keep all the cash for further investment, right? Or for prudence, right? Because the economy is so bad. So that will be better, right? For the advantage of the company to keep all the cash, just like HSBC, right? Just like HSBC. HSBC still making profit, but the authority in UK, right, restricted the freedom of HSBC in issuing dividends. So don't think that when you own a particular percentage of shares in the company, then you'll be automatically entitled to the same level of dividends. No, right? It all depends. But anyway, remember that when you hold ordinary shares, normally it means that you don't have any guaranteed level of return, right? You don't. But normally, right? Normally, you're entitled to all the remaining assets in case of winding up. So it means that if the company being wound up, right, in the winding up process, or when the company being liquidated, something we are going to learn on the last lecture. Right? And as a shareholder, for example, if you hold 20% of the ordinary shares, then normally, right, if you are lucky, if you are still something left in this company, then you're entitled to share 20% of the remaining asset. For example, right? For example, when the company liquidates, there's only one computer left by this company, and this computer worth $1,000. Then you own 20% of the ordinary shares. Then you may entitle to $200, right? So that is, what kind of right you're supposed to have as a holder of ordinary shares. Besides that, ordinary shares holder enjoy unrestricted right to vote in general meeting, and that's very important, right? Very important, because normally when you hold ordinary shares, you can vote and without any restrictions. Is it something so unusual to you? Because you may suppose that as a shareholder, I can always vote in a meeting. But in fact, that's not. Right? No, not necessarily. Because when you hold different kinds of shares, it means you have different rights. Some of your rights may be restricted. It means that you may only vote in certain meetings, or you may only vote in certain topics. But for the ordinary shareholders, normally they have unrestricted right to vote. It means that they can vote on every single topic. So think of it, what kind of people prefer to hold ordinary shares? As a passive investor, or someone caring about the control of the company? If your primary concern is on having a fixed return, do you think that you prefer to have ordinary shares? Maybe not, right? Because you look at the same paragraph. You don't have any guarantee for a fixed return on dividends, but you have unlimited right to vote. So if you're the one who control a fixed return as a passive investor, what I mean by passive investor, you only care about getting paid every year, but I don't want to participate in the control of this company. So sometimes that may be the case, right? You're not really interested. I just want to have passive income. So if that's the case, then ordinary shares may not be your choice. But if you aim for controlling the company, then you may want to have ordinary shares. Or if you want to acquire the company in a way that you can control the company, then you should acquire all the ordinary shares. Because that's the only way to guarantee you can control this company. So let's take a look at another kind of shares. So something we call as a preference shares, 優先股, right? Preference shares. Preference, it means preferred to something. 優於某種, right? It means you are better than the other kind. So preference shares, so actually it's a comparative concept. By comparing with what? By comparing with ordinary shares. Right? Normally, by comparing with ordinary shares. Well, when you hold preference shares, it means that you have a fixed right to dividends. As long as the company is making profit, of course, right? Of course. A company cannot, by law, issue dividends when the company is making a loss, right? You can only issue dividends when you have a profit. So when you hold preference shares, it means that normally, right? Normally, you have a fixed right to dividends. What I mean by fixed right? Fixed for what? fixed amount or percentage. There are two different concepts, right? Because they are different. A fixed amount means that I am entitled to $1 for every single share, right? So when the company is making a profit, then you should at least pay me $1. Depends on how many shares I hold. If I have 10 parent shares, then you have to pay me $10. Right? If I have 3 parent shares, then you have to pay me $3 at least, right? You can pay more than that, but at least. So that's what we mean by fixed amount. But sometimes it's only a fixed percentage, not a fixed sum of money, but a percentage. Maybe you, if you hold 10 shares, out of 100, then you are holding 10%, right? Then you entitled to 10% of the profit, right? So which one will be better? It depends. Again, it depends. A fixed amount means fixed. That may be $1 or $2. If the company is making a huge profit, right, then maybe you will be underpaid, right? Because you only entitled $1 for one share, but the company make $1 billion. If you entitled to a percentage, normally then you will be better, right? Because you will get paid for more when the company is making a huge profit. So again, it depends, right? It depends. So you have to learn how to respond to the questions, right? Always, it depends. But you may want to ask another question. What I mean by fixed amount? How about if I get guaranteed to pay for $1, right? For 1 parent shares I hold. But what happens if the company is making a loss? I mean, the company is not making a profit. So I don't get paid on 2019, I don't get paid on 2020. So how to guarantee my income? You answer my question here, right? You hold private shares. You belong to the first class, it means a fixed amount of payment. But you know that if a company wish to issue dividends, the company must make a profit. If the company is running a loss, the company cannot issue dividends by law, right? Because it's not possible. The company is making a loss. So how can I guarantee my income? You are entitled to it later. When the company is making profit again, then you can pay back for all your outstanding dividends, right? For example, the company suffering from losses in 2018, in 2019, in 2020, right? The company back into profit in 2021. And in 2021, it depends on how much money being made by the company. You can get paid once again for all the outstanding sum. I mean, from 2018 to 2020, right? You still entitled to your outstanding payment. So parent shares, or when you're a holder of parent shares, what will be your primary concern normally? When your primary concern is on investment, right? Investment. When you care about your return, when you care about your income, when you care about dividends, then you prefer to hold parent shares. Why? One more thing. Normally, the holders of parent shares, they have limited right in voting. They can only vote in some matters, certain matters. For example, dividend, right? Because they concern about dividend. Of course, they can vote on dividend. But they cannot vote on, all kinds of dividend. They cannot vote on every single different topics. No. They can only vote on certain topics. But they have guaranteed income, a fixed level of income. Even the company is not making profit this year, you can still get the outstanding payment later if the company is capable to back into profit again. So what kind of person prefer to hold parent shares? When you want to be a passive investor, when you only care about your income, you are not targeting for controlling this company, then probably you want to have parent shares. So you think about it, right? You think about it. If a company want to attract some new investors, but the company not want that person to control this company, right? but the company want his money. So the company will think about, we better issue preference shares to this guy, right? Because this guy only care about sharing the profit. And I don't want this person to have any control of this company. So preference shares will be suitable, right? Suitable for the company, not having another person to control this company. And also suitable for this investor, because this investor care about what? Return, right? Care about the money. But if you're targeting for controlling the company, then you should subscribe all the shares, right? Because the return or the dividend is not your primary concern. You want to vote. You want to control this company. So you will try to subscribe all the shares. You will try to buy all the shares, all right? So, and that's why we have different kinds of shares or different kinds of shares. So another kind, redeemable shares. What I mean by redeemable shares? 可贖回股份, right? So the name in Chinese suggests something. Redeemable. It means the shares can be redeemed by the company. What I mean by redeem? Buy back, right? Bought back, buying back. Buy back from the company. Because normally, right? You have to remember, normally. So once you pay as an investor, right? Once you pay, and then you get the shares, you cannot ask the company to return the money to you, and then you return the shares to the company. No, that's not allowed, right? So once you get the shares, then you are a shareholder. So unless someone buy the shares from you, so otherwise, you can't ask the company to return the money back to you, right? Normally, that's not possible. But unless the company issues redeemable shares, so it means that, right? Sometimes the company, they can issue a kind of shares that can be buy back from the company later, right? Can be redeemed by the company later. It means the company pay back to the shareholders and then cancel the original shares. I issue 10 redeemable shares to Mr. Chen, right? Then later on, the company can buy back all the shares from Mr. Chen and then to cancel all the shares. So if a company issue this kind of shares, we call it redeemable shares, right? Redeemable shares. 可贖回股份. So why we need to have redeemable shares? So probably you understand why we want to have owner shares, because we are caring about the control of the company, voting, right? Unrestricted right to vote. So probably you understand why we have parent shares, because you care about your investment, you care about your return. So why we have redeemable shares? It must have a purpose, right? It must have a purpose. So number one, think about a private company. So unlike a listed company, if you hold the share of HSBC, if you hold the shares of Alibaba, right? If you hold the shares of Tencent, if you don't like that shares, you can sell it with your cell phone, right? Just click a few buttons. So you can do it within a few minutes because you have an open market here. But think about a private company, right? A private company, ABC Limited, BBC Limited, DDT Limited, right? When you are a member or when you are a shareholder of a private company, or a very small private company, you don't have an open market. So if I invested $1 million in this company, so one day if I want to get the money back, that would be very difficult, right? Because we don't have an open market to sell the shares. So you have to ask someone to subscribe your shares, right? To buy it, not subscribe, to buy your shares before you can get away. But you don't have an open market. So sometimes that will be very difficult, right? To get your money back. So in order to attract an investor, so sometimes the private company or small private company, they issue redeemable shares. For example, to say the conditions, I issue the redeemable shares to you, but the company, you can ask the company to buy back all the shares after 3 years or after 5 years. So the worst scenario will be you locked up in this company for 3 years, but not more than 3 years, right? So that will be better to you. Because if the company is good, then you keep the shares, right? But if the company is, keep making a loss, never issue any dividends, then you only being locked in this company for 3 years. Because after 3 years, you can ask the company to buy back all your shares, right? So sometimes the company, when they only want to have short-term capital, then they issue redeemable shares. They don't want to have a new shareholder, actually, right? They don't want to have one, but they need money. They need money because they have, they have some problem. They have to settle. So they issue redeemable shares. So they get your money. When the company returns to profit, once their operation back to normal, then they buy back all the shares and they kick you off. So that's another reason for the company to issue redeemable shares, because they don't want you to be here permanently, right? So they issue redeemable shares to you. Another one, always remember, right? That's all about think about an example. So sometimes when you want to be a senior staff of the company, right? When you want to be a senior staff, to be a general manager, be the vice president of the company, before you can assume that positions, the company will ask you, you have to buy some shares of this company. You have to hold some shares of this company. But they only want the senior staff to hold the shares of this company. So once you resign, they want all the shares back, because they don't want any outsider in their company. I'm talking about a private company, right? So they may state a conditions in the shares, as a redeemable shares, stating that you can only hold the shares when you are the general manager of this company, or when you are the vice president of this company, or when you're the CFO of this company. So once you resign, then you have to return all the shares back to the company within 3 months or within 2 weeks, or immediately, right? So that's another reason. Because you want to impose a control regarding the membership. And that's another reason that the company issue redeemable shares. So redeemable shares, when you issue redeemable shares, you must always state a condition. What do you mean by condition? Under what kind of condition that the company will redeem the shares? So normally that will be something happen, number one, right? For example, when you resign from this company, then you have to return all the shares, right? And then it means the company can redeem all the shares. That's a condition. Or that may be a time frame. The company can redeem the shares after 3 years or 4 years. Do you get my point here, right? So it may be a condition, redeemable share. Redeem when something happens, right? When you resign, when something happens, then I can redeem the shares. Or a time frame. The company can redeem the shares after 3 years or 4 years, right? But anyway, you must state some condition, something, right? When that happens, or after certain years, certain months, then you have the right to redeem the shares. Okay, so that's about the different class of shares. Let's talk about shareholders meeting. Back to basic, right? Back to basic. So always remember that a company is actually being managed by 2 different organs. So number one, the board of directors. Another one, the general meeting of the shareholders. The board of directors, in Chinese we call it 董事局, right? And the general meeting of shareholders, 股東會議. So company actually being organized, managed by the 2 organs here. So how the 2 organs here to make decisions? They vote, and then to pass a resolution, right? They vote. So of course, right, if you have only one director, then they don't have to vote. If there's only one director, so that person will be responsible for everything. But if you have 2 or more than 2 directors, then you have to vote. If you have 1 shareholder, that's possible under the new company ordinance, then you don't have to vote, of course, right? You are the only one to make decision. But if we have 2 or more than 2 members, then you have to vote, right? So always remember that the 2 organs here, they make their decision by resolutions. What I mean by resolutions? The result of your voting, right? So when you vote for it, you have a result. more members saying yes or more members saying no. So anyway, you have a result, and that result we call resolution, 決議, all right? Resolution, it means something being decided, right? Decided. Okay. In lecture 6, we focus on shareholders first. In lecture 7, we talk about directors, right? Let's think about the shareholders first. The shareholders manage the company indirectly through the general meeting, in accordance with the company ordinance and articles. So why did shareholders manage the company indirectly? What I mean by indirectly? The directors, they control the company directly, right? Directors, 董事, they control the company directly. But members, they only control the company indirectly. So why the members, they can only control the company indirectly? Two things, right? Number one, if I'm a director of a company, right? If I'm one of the directors of a company, suppose we have 3 directors here. So once we make a decision, right, I can execute that decisions. For example, right, 3 directors here, right? The ladies here, and you are Simon, right? Simon, Edward, you are Rio, right? I still remember your name. Okay, so we are the 3 directors here. So we made a decision. We are going to sign a contract with Hong Kong Bank, right? We made a decision. We are the board of directors. So tomorrow morning, so I go to the headquarters of HSBC and then to sign the contract, right? Because I can represent the company. So number one, that's what we mean by controlling the company directly. Number one, right? Number 2, I can make decisions of this company on everything, unless something stated in the articles or the company that being reserved for the members to make decision on it. You get my point here? If you want to understand the authority of a director, so you don't have to check the company auditor for what he cannot, for what he can do. You only check for what he cannot do. You check the article. Is that something being reserved for the members? And then you check the company auditor. Is that something being reserved for the members? Because other than that, the directors, they make decisions for the company on everything, right? So that's why I'm saying that directors, they control the company directly. So why do you say that the shareholders manage the company indirectly? Number one, the shareholders, even you are the major shareholder, or even you are the only shareholder, right? Even I hold 99% of this company, 99% of the shares of this company, I cannot represent the company to do anything. Never, right? Never. Even you hold 100%, you hold 90%, 99%, or even 100%, you cannot represent the company to do anything. Nothing, right? So I cannot sign a contract on behalf of the company, even I hold 100%. Number 2, the shareholders, they can only vote, right? So how they exercise their authority, they can only vote in the general meeting, right? So they cannot represent a company. So what they can do, they can vote, right? And they can only vote on certain topics stated in the article or the company, the company ordinance that belong to the authority of the members. For example, right, if you want to change the name of the company, I mean, very interesting. If you look at the company ordinance states that if you want to change the name of the company, then you need to have approval from the members. It means that that cannot be decided by directors. So under that kind of condition, right, when the directors, they want to change the name of the company, then they hold a meeting for the members, and then I vote on it. And that's the only way that I can influence the company. So I only control the company indirectly. Do you get my point? All right? So remember, members only control the company indirectly, and the directors control the company directly. All right? So we have to learn something regarding shareholder meeting. So you know that even the shareholder, they cannot control the company directly, but they still have some influence regarding the management of the company. So we have to learn right? You have to learn how a company how a meeting being called, and how a meeting being conducted. Number one, 2 more pages, then we have a break, all right? 2 more pages. Always remember, the shareholders, they can only vote, right? They can only accept their influence to the management of the company by voting. They can never represent the company to do anything, right? Vote. They vote on the meeting. So how many council meetings? There are 2 council meetings for a company. Number 1, AGM, right? I'm sure some of you heard about it. What I mean by AGM, annual general meeting, right? 周年股東大會 annual general meeting. So what is AGM? AGM is a meeting for the members that every company have to hold. It means that it is compulsory, right? Compulsory. You have to hold AGM, and you don't have a choice. So for a private company, AGM must be held within 9 months after the end of the financial year. And for a public company, 6 months. What I mean by financial year? So don't mix up financial year and calendar year. What I mean by calendar year? From January to December, that's a calendar year, right? It means 12 months from January to December. This is a calendar year. Financial year. You pick any time frame for 12 months. So you can end on January, you can end on June, and on December. But normally for the company in Hong Kong, normally what will be the financial year? March. Why? Well, that's compatible to the IRD requirement, right? The tax, when you calculate the tax payment, so that's the day to cut off. So normally the financial year end of a company in Hong Kong is March, right? But of course that's not compulsory, right? You can choose any time frame for a period of 12 months, right? But anyway, for every private company, you have to hold the AGM not more than 9 months after the financial year, right? It depends on the day of your financial year. So what need to be approved or being voted by the members in the AGM? 3 different things. Number 1, financial statements. Number 2, director report. And then the auditor report. So I can tell you that, right? I can tell you that. Well, first, compulsory. What need to be approved or being discussed in the AGM, and they are compulsory. It means that you don't have a choice, right? When you hold AGM, and as a director, you have to present director report, financial report, and auditor report to the members for approval, right? You can't change, right? This is compulsory, absolutely compulsory. Financial statement, of course, it means something serious. It means the profit and loss. We call it income statement, and then the balance sheet, right? So it means that it shows whether this company is making profit or not, and also show the asset of this company. That's something we call financial statement. And auditor report, you understand what we mean by auditor report, right? Right? It means your financial statement must be audited by the accountants, right? By the CPA. And being certified, right? Being signed off by the CPA. So they are real things. But director report, I would say, what means a director report? It means a summary for what happened in the last year, the last financial year, and what being predicted to happen in the coming year. So the director report may mean something for this company. You can really take a look at it. But I don't think that it is something really material for a private company. Right? Because for a small private company, director report, well, actually it's quite, sometimes it's only a formality. I mean, for a small company, right? But the financial statement and the auditor report, they are real, right? They are real things, material. So remember that it's only meeting that's compulsory, a statutory requirement. You have to hold it. Because it enables the members to inspect the company from financial, managerial, and auditing perspective. Financial, managerial, and audit, right? So the members, they can, inspect the company from many different angles. Then we have another kind of meeting. How we call it? Extraordinary general meeting. Right? It's not something really extraordinary. It's only another kind of meeting. So how to define an EGM? Do you remember how we define public company? When a company is not a public company, then you are having a public company, right? So how to define man when you are not a woman? How to define woman when you are not a man? Well, so we have something similar again here. Well, I don't think that's a lazy definition. I don't think that's a casual definition, right? It makes sense. Why? Because there's only one AGM. Right? You can only have one AGM. And there are two kinds of meetings. So if you are not holding an AGM, then you must, right? You are having an AGM. So that's a good definition, actually. Right? So whenever you are not holding any general meeting, then you are holding an extraordinary general meeting, or just a general meeting, right? Or we just call it general meeting. So why we need to hold the EGM? We understand why we need to hold the AGM, because that's compulsory, right? It's a law, we have to. So why we hold EGM? EGM is not compulsory. It means that it's possible for a company without holding any EGM at all throughout the whole year or several years, right? Company never hold EGM for 5 years or 10 years. That's possible. Right? So why we need to hold EGM? Because something needs to be approved by the members in accordance with the company ordinance or articles. Always remember that, right? Directors control the company directly. Members control the company indirectly. So why we are saying that the members control the company indirectly? Because only something reserved stated in the articles for the company or the company ordinance, stating that it must be approved by the members, right? So other than that, the director can make decision on everything. So why the directors call up a meeting and they call up an EGM? Because something stated in the articles or the company ordinance that cannot be decided by directors. It means the approval from members is necessary. So when that happens, right? So under that kind of situations, then the directors, they call up an EGM. They call up extraordinary general meetings. So I'll give you the same example again. The change of name of the company. Right? Because that's the company ordinance state that, right? The company ordinance state that when you want to change the name of the company, you have to hold a meeting and get the approval from the members. Or based on something in the articles. Do you remember that you have the right to say anything in the articles, right? Provided that which is not against the company ordinance. So for example, if there's a provision in the article saying that if this company sign any contract with the outsider, which involve more than $1 million, then that must be approved by the shareholders, right? You can have a provision like this. So if you have a provision like this, then if you want to sign a contract with an outsider that involve more than $1 million, then you have to hold the EGM. Because that is something stated in the article, right? So when you hold EGM, I'm sure that there's only one reason. You need approval from the members because of the company ordinance or the articles, right? Something that must be approved by the members. So remember that unlike the AGM, the EGM is not compulsory, right? And there will be no specific documents or topic that must be discussed in the meeting, unlike the AGM, right? Unlike the AGM. The agenda in the AGM already fixed by the law. You have to present the financial statement, audited report, directed report to the members for approval, right? No one less, because that is something defined by the law. But for EGM, we don't know, right? Case by case. We can only be certain that the AGM being called up because the directors, they need approval from the members for something, right? But what is that thing, we don't know, right? So case by case, all right? We have a break first, right? So 15 minutes. So after that, we talk about, all the remaining stuff in holding a general meeting. Okay, I bring you back to class, right? So before the break, we learned about that there are two kinds of meetings. That the general, that the shareholders, right? They can vote. So number one is the AGM, another one is the EGM. So the AGM is compulsory, and for the EGM, so that depends, right? Depends on the articles of the company ordinance. It means that something need to be approved by the members, then you need to hold the EGM, right? So that's what we learned before the break. So how to call a meeting? So how about the way to call a meeting? So sometimes we call convening and general meetings. It means calling up a meeting, right? It's a legal jargon that being used in company ordinance. So we call convening a meeting. It means call up a meeting. So what you need to do when you need to call a meeting, so you have to think about the notice, the agenda, and then the day and the venue. So what I mean by notice, so you have to notify all the related parties when you want to hold a meeting, right? So of course, when you want to hold a general meeting for the members to vote, you have to notify all the members, definitely. But not just the members, you also need to notify all the directors. And you need to notify the auditor sometime, right? So you have to send out the notice to all the related parties. And what we mean by agenda, the proposed topics or resolution that what we want to discuss in the general meeting. So why we hold a meeting like this, right? Because unlike an AGM, if you have an AGM, so everyone already learned that what you want to discuss in an AGM, because it's compulsory, right? All the different agendas in the AGM is compulsory, but not compulsory in the EGM. So when you hold an EGM, you have to notify all the related parties what are the agenda. It means what we want to discuss in this meeting. And of course, the location and the date, right? Of course. But before that, who can convene a meeting? Who can call a meeting? There are three parties: directors, members, and the court that we have to think about, right? Number one, think about the directors first. Directors, they always come first in our mind when we think about calling out a meeting. Why? Back to the basic principle. Back to the basic. The directors, they are manager of the company. So they manage the company day to day, right? For all the daily activities. So the directors, they enjoy almost unlimited authority to do anything on behalf of the company, including calling up a meeting. So when we look at the first paragraph, the company ordinance states that the directors, they have statutory power to call up a meeting, right? The law states that they can always call a meeting, general meeting for the members. That authority also being stated in the articles. Do you remember the model articles, right? We have the model articles here. So the same authority also being stated under the articles, no matter for a public company or a private company. But we have to be careful when we are looking at section 565 of the company ordinance. In the law states that the directors of the company shall have power to call a general meeting. Directors is a full form, right? Directors, S. Directors, right? Directors. So it means that, right? It means that when you have a board of directors, it means when you have more than one directors, the decision to call a meeting must be the majority decision of the board of directors. For example, we have 3 directors in the board. So it means at least 2 directors agreed to call a meeting, right? But not just one director. But of course, we have exceptions. So what would be the exceptions? If there's only one director, because that's possible, right? If that's possible. So nowadays, under the new company ordinance, it is possible to just have one director. So if you only have one director, that director can call a meeting. Or if you amend the articles, right? If you amend the articles in a way that you allow a single director to call a meeting, that's also possible. Then how about members? Do you think that the members can call a meeting? The answer is no, right? No, they don't. Members do not have power to call a meeting, but under some exceptions, right? Of course, there are some exceptions, but in general, the members themselves, they cannot call a meeting. That's always the same, under the same logic, under the same legal principle here, because members or shareholders, they are owners of the company. They own the company. They don't manage the company, right? So only the directors manage the company. So in general, right? In general, the members, they do not have power to call a meeting. They don't, right? They cannot call a meeting. However, the company ordinance allows any member representing 5% of the total voting right to request the company, it means the directors, to call a meeting. If you hold, right? If you hold 5% of the shares, then you have the right to request the directors to hold a meeting. But remember that you don't have the right to hold a meeting. You only have the right to request the directors to hold a meeting, right? For example, as a student, you have the right to request the teacher to end the class earlier, but you don't have the right to end the class earlier. That's different, right? That's different. So you have to be careful with the wordings in the company ordinance. You only have the right to request, or you have the right to do something. It's different, right? You have the right to request, right? As a husband, you only have the right to request to your wife that you return home later, right? You only have the right to request, but you still have to return home on time. Without your wife approval, right, you will be in trouble. So remember that the members, if you hold 5% of shares, you have the right to request the directors, the whole meeting, and only, right? Only if the directors fail to call a meeting within 21 days, then you have the right to call the meeting by yourself. All right? So it means that the members, they are subject to some conditions. So they have to fulfill some condition first. So number one, right? First, they only have the right to request. They request and being ignored by the directors. So only when that happens, then you can call a meeting. So in general, the members, they don't have the right to call a meeting directly, right? So you can only do it under certain conditions. Also, if there do not exist a valid board of directors, what I mean by without a valid board of directors? When the board of directors is not functioning, right? When the board of directors is not functioning, can you give me an example? When the board of directors is not functioning at all? Yes. When all of them get killed. Possible. In accident. It happened. I really handle a case. All the directors, they get killed. Because they're on vacation. On the money of the company, right? The company pay for them for the vacations. But they all get killed. In Maldives, 買代夫撞機掛晒. Yeah, they all get killed, yes. So one of them. And sometimes when the board of directors, they are in a deadlock situations. For example, we have 4 directors in the board, right? So A, B, C, and D. So A, B on one side, C, D on another side. So they are always fighting on each other. It means when A, B agree on something, D and C, when A, B agree on something, C and D disagree on the same topics. When C and D agree on something, so A and B disagree. It's always like that. So the board is actually not functioning at all, right? So when we do not have a valid board of directors, then any two or more members representing 10% of the total voting right, it means when you hold 10% or more shares, then you can call general meetings in the same manner as the directors. But again, you're subject to some condition first, right? When you can prove that the board of directors is not functioning. Right? One of the example, when they get killed or in a deadlock situations. So only when that happens, then the members, they can call a meeting. So again, subject to a condition, and they don't have the right to do it, under their own authority. You can only do it when something happens, right? So in general, we call that the members, they don't have the power to call meetings, only when something happens, right? So how about court? How about a court? Of course, right? Of course. The court can call a meeting. But just use your common sense. The court is not part of the company, unlike the shareholders or unlike the directors. The court is not part of the company. It means that normally, when the company is functioning effectively, so I don't think that the court will step in order to call a meeting. On the judge, right? Because a meeting is supposed to be something belong to part of the operation of the company itself. Right? It should not be the job of the court here. So the court will only exercise the discretionary power to call a meeting if something unusual happens. Something unusual. For example, right? For example, Section 570 stated that the court may call a meeting if it is impracticable to call a meeting in any manner which a general meeting can be called. Impracticable, it means something like impossible, right? Not possible or not really practical, right? Impracticable, 即係唔係太可能可以做到 right? Not really possible to call a meeting in any manner which a general meeting can be called. It means that a meeting cannot be called by the general principle in calling a meeting. For example, you need someone to call a meeting, right? When you want to call a meeting, you need someone to call a meeting. Someone being qualified to call a meeting. That may be the directors normally, or the members subject to certain conditions. And what happens if we don't have directors, and we also don't have shareholders, or the directors or the board of directors is not functioning, and the members, they are not willing to call a meeting, then how to call a meeting? So that will be the discretionary power of court. Number two, when that's impracticable to call a meeting in a manner prescribed by the article, so it means that something stated in the article as a condition that you have to fulfill, but we are not capable to fulfill, but we need to have a meeting. So under that kind of circumstances, then you can ask the court to exercise the discretionary power to order a meeting, right? You can order a meeting, to hold a meeting under court order, right? That's very cool. So in simple language, it means that the court can order a meeting if it cannot be properly called, or the meeting cannot be called in a manner as stated in the article. We look at some cases, then we understand actually what it means. So number one, right? Number one. So what happened in this case? Right? What happened in this case? All the directors and shareholders are in an accident. All of them. Right? All of them. 即係同咩啦? All of them get killed, right? I cannot say that word. So all of them get killed. So all the directors and shareholders die in an accident, but the beneficiary of the deceased member want to inherit the shares. Because the shareholders, they have children, right? they have grandchildren, they have wife and husband. So they want to inherit the share, right? They want to inherit the shares. Right? But the articles require that it must be approved by the directors. So there's something stated in the articles. Do you remember that the definition of private company? One of the definitions of a private company is that there must be restrictions regarding the transfer of shares, right? That's required in order to become a private company. So one of it is, if you want to transfer shares or if you want to inherit the share, that must be approved by the directors. So in this company, right, in this case, there's a provision in the article. It says that if you want to inherit the shares, for example, if one of the members pass away and then the son or the wife or the husband want to inherit the shares, then that must be approved by the directors. But what happened here? Directors also get killed. So it fulfilled the second scenario here. When something stated in the article, but that's not possible to attain, right? Because the article states that all the inheritance of the shares must be approved by directors, but all the directors get killed. So the only way to hold a meeting in order to approve the succession of the shares will be a court order, right? We hold a meeting under a court order. Another one, when a meeting cannot be publicly conducted. So what happened in this case, right? Another one. A very interesting case. Something wrong in the article regarding the appointment of directors. Something wrong, it means something inconsistent in the articles regarding the appointment of directors. It means an error in law, right? Wrongly drafted, the articles, right? Wrongly drafted. So that's why I'm always saying that it's not advisable to draft your own articles. You better to adopt the model article, right? Just a change of how that's not suitable to your case. But don't draft everything by your own. That will be very risky. Because sometimes there may be error in law means you draft something which is inconsistent with the company audit, or something missed, or something being illogical, right? But there are so many things you have to cover for the articles to be effective. And that's what happened in this case, right? Something wrong with the draftings in this company regarding the appointment of directors. It means that, right? It means that as a result, the validity of the board, issue shares, and even the members were all in doubt. With the directors, once being appointed, they issue shares, and then they approve, the issuance of shares. So if the appointment of the director had an error here, had an error in law here, then everything happened follow the appointment of directors may also have error in law. So it means the board of directors is not effective. The shares being issued, not effective. The members, not effective. So nothing regarding the two organs here are effective, right? Nothing. But the problem needs to be resolved, right? But who can call a meeting? No one. No one can call a meeting here. The directors, they are not validly appointed. The members, they are not validly, joined the company. Because the issuance of shares are problems here. So the only way to resolve the problem will be to order a meeting under a court order. All right? So that's another example. But in reality, so I can tell you that, well, sometimes it happens, right? The situation like this or this, sometimes it happens. But in reality, when you instruct a lawyer in order to get a court order to hold a meeting, normally we do it because we want to resolve the deadlock, or even a deadlock. So you think about that, right? You think about that. We look at the first paragraph. The minority shareholders, so sometimes they refuse to attend meetings intentionally in order to fail to quorum with an ulterior purpose. Do you know what's a quorum? It means that's the minimum number of attendants in a meeting. Right? For example, there are 10 shareholders in a company. The quorum may be 7 or 8 or 9 or even 10, right? It means if you want to make sure that your meeting is valid, you will need to have a minimum number of attendants. So otherwise, your meeting will be becoming invalid, 流會, right? You need something like legislative council. So sometimes they have to count, so how many members, right, are in the whole. And then you think about it. When you are a minority, right? When you are a minority, when you only hold, when you hold 4 shares, right? For example, there's 10 shares being issued by the company. So 10 shares being issued by the company. You only hold 4, right? As a minority, you hold 4 shares. So someone want to propose to change the name of the company, and based on the company ordinance, that only need to be approved by order resolution, which is 50%. It means that when 5 shares vote for yes, this resolution can pass, right? Because I only hold 4 shares, I'm a minority. I hold 4 shares only. Another guy holds 6. If I attend a meeting, if I attend a meeting, what happens? I'm losing anyway. You get a point here. Because another major shareholder holds 6 shares. And based on the law, the resolution can be passed by 5, right? Order resolution, 5. So if I attend a meeting, I will always be the loser. And nothing I can do. But I checked the articles, and the columns, right? The column stated that there's a column. If you want to make sure that the meeting is valid, there must be at least 80% attendance in terms of shares, right? Because I hold 4. If I never attend a meeting, it means that they can never achieve the quorum. I can avoid the majority to pass these resolutions. Do you get my point here, right? So I'm taking advantage from the rules of the quorum. I try to take advantage from the mechanism of the company. If I never attend a meeting, then this resolution can never be passed. All right. Can you do something like this? There's something like filibuster in legislative council, right? 即係類似拉布，類似 concept. So can I do something like this? Well, I mean in general, yes. Right? It's not compulsory to attend a meeting under the company ordinance. You can't find any provision in saying that you must attend a meeting. Well, but this is not sensible, right? Sometimes maybe I'm busy. Maybe I get sick, or maybe I'm not really interested in this agenda. You want to change the name of the company, I don't care, right? I only care about dividend. So I'm not going to attend a meeting anyway. It means that attending a meeting as a member is not compulsory. So I'm not saying that you cannot do it. But if you are always doing something like this, in order to defeat the quorum, then based on the case law, so sometimes the majority, they can apply to the court to get an order and to ignore the quorum, right? We look at the judgment here. So I highlight in red in the same paragraph. So sometimes the court may be willing to order a meeting regardless of the quorum. So I quote the judgment here. The wrongfulness of the conduct of either party shall be determined in other proceedings. The quorum cannot be regarded as conferring upon anyone to have some form of right to veto. So what it means? It means that if you feel that something wrong with the company, right? Something wrong, someone you don't like, so you have to settle that problem by other means. Because quorum, right? Quorum is not something that you should manipulate as a form of veto. Veto means they deny, right? Because a quorum is a quorum. the quorum is supposed to be a legitimate requirement that when you want to hold a meeting, if you want to make it valid, you have to make sure that the majority attend the meeting, right? So that's the purpose in having a quorum. But the quorum is not a weapon for you to play the game in order to defeat the normal operation of the company. Because the thing about it, the normal operation of the company, which is based on the rule of majority, right? The rule of majority. No matter in the board of directors or in the general meetings, when you are the majority, then you are in control. And that's the underlying principle regarding the operation of the company. And you should not take advantage of the quorum in order to defeat that underlying principle, right? Because you can take advantage from quorum when you never attend a meeting, and the majority, they cannot pass a resolution. But it means that you are abusing your right, because you abuse your right in order to defeat the underlying principle regarding the operation of the company, because the operation of company based on the rule of majority, right? When you are majority, and you can control. So you try to manipulate, right? You try to abuse something we call a quorum to defeat that legal principle, and the court sometimes disagree with it. So when you're always doing that, I'm not saying that when you are being absent for one time, then the court will grant an order like this one. But if you're always doing that, right? And if the majority, they have evidence to prove that you abuse, right? You try to take advantage from it, then the majority may get a court order to ignore the quorum. It means that they can still hold a meeting and to pass a resolution even without your attendance, right? So how about time of the notice? So of course, right, of course, when you hold a meeting, you have to serve the notice, in advance, in order to notify all the related persons to attend the meeting. So the requirement is 21 days for the AGM, and 14 days for other meeting, right? For other meeting in EGM, that will be 14 days for limited company and 7 days for unlimited company. But remember one thing which is very important. The company audit only concerns a minimum period of notice. So it means that you can change the articles to make it longer. That's possible. But you cannot make it normally, right? Normally. You cannot make it shorter. Normally. Right? So you can always make it longer. So it means that you can change the article. And to state that, so notice required for AGM is 30 days. So you can do so. Right? You can do so. But almost everyone follow the law here. Right? Almost everyone. Okay. So I'm saying that normally you cannot have a notice, right, shorter than what being stated in the law. Normally. But sometimes you can do so. It means there are exceptions. When we look at the second paragraph, a shorter notice is possible if being agreed by a required level of majority. Sometimes that is possible. Sometimes that's possible. For example, for AGM, a shorter notice can be approved by all the members. But remember, all the members. It means 100%, right? 100%. So when all of them agree, then you can have a shorter period of time, shorter than what being stated in law. For EGM, a shorter notice can be approved by 95%. Right? So I mean the threshold is really high. Because for AGM, it is 100%. Everyone must agree with a shorter period of notice. And even for EGM, the threshold is 95%. So almost 100%. All right? But it's possible. It's possible. So how about the content of the notice? What needs to be included in the notice? So the basic requirement will be the date and time. It means time, right? Time. The value. The purpose. It means when, where, and for what. All right? when, number one, day and time, right? Day and time mean when. The venue mean where. The purpose mean for what, right? What you want to discuss. So you have to state the information sufficiently, because of public notification enable the members to make decision whether they want to attend a meeting or not. But as I told you, to attend a meeting is not compulsory for a member. Well, I'm sure some of you hold the shares of a listed company in Hong Kong, right? So sometimes you receive the notice of a listed company that you can vote in the meeting on something. You receive the agenda. But most of the time, you ignore that. But you know that you are a minor shareholder. So your vote will have no influence to the final outcome, right? Most of the time. So unless you are a major shareholder, you hold a lot of shares. So normally we don't, right? We don't hold a lot of shares. So we know that no matter we vote for yes or no, the consequence will be the same, right? Because we are passive investors. We only care about the share price or the dividends, right? But not to control most of us, unless we are very wealthy. So we don't care. So it means that to attend a general meeting is not compulsory. It cannot be compulsory. Right? So only requirement in law is that you have to state clearly why you want to hold a meeting. Right? Because when you hold a meeting for something that I'm not interested, then I just ignore that. Right? But anyway, you have to notify the members what you want to discuss. So it means that, you look at the second paragraph, you have to include the proposed resolution. You have to be very specific. You cannot have a notification in saying that let's discuss on property development. Not good, right? So poor drafting. You know, sometimes when I check the corporate documents, when they're in trouble, the accountants or the solicitors, they hand me the files. When I check the notice, right? So I find some of the very poor draftings. But they send a notice to the members saying that the whole meeting for discussion on, you know, property development, future development of the company, thinking about, you know, installing some new computer, new infrastructures. Well, sometimes sometimes it's fine, right? When no one is challenged. But if someone is challenged on the notice, that will be very dangerous, because that's not specific enough. So you have to make it very specific, right? So that will be much better. For example, to approve a contract which involves a transaction more than $1 million based on Section 26 of the articles. Or we hold a meeting to change the name of a company based on Section 111 of the company ordinance. Right. So if you are being specific, then that will be very unlikely you will be challenged by anyone regarding the validity of your notice, as well as the resolution made under this meeting, right? So you may pass some resolutions, but if the notification is not clear, then the resolution will be challenged by someone. It's being invalid, right? So you better make it specific, because we have case law in saying that you fail to state sufficient in the nature of the business to be transacted that may render the meeting and the resolution passed invalid. It means even you can pass a resolution, right? You may be challenged, and the result may be your resolution becoming invalid, right? It's not possible to execute your resolution. So that's no good, right? So if any of you work in corporate affairs or corporate matters, remember to make it specific. So you know that when you serve a notice, you have to determine the time, date, and venue, right? So how about that? If I'm a director, right? I'm one of the directors, but I'm a bad director. I did something bad to this company, right? I've done something bad to this company. So I know that because I have to hold the AGM. I have to present the director's report. But I want to avoid the embarrassment, because I don't want the members to ask me questions, right? But especially regarding the financial statement, because the company is making a loss. If I make a lot of money, I don't mind, right? So I will be very welcome directors, I will be a very popular director, right? So everyone like me because I make a lot of money. So everyone get a dividend. But I keep losing money. Then I've done something bad. I did something stupid to the company, right? So I don't want the members to attend the meeting better. Because I know that they will ask embarrassing questions. Or they may ask a very tough question. Maybe, for example, Simon, right? He's a very tough guy, he's a very mean person. So if he's one of the members. So he's going to ask a very embarrassing question. So I don't want him to be here. So what can I do? So think about that, right? As a director, I have the right to determine the time and the venue for the general meeting. And that's not possible for the company ordinance to state any guidelines here. Right? That's not possible in saying that you have to hold a general meeting in Conrad or in Grand Hyatt, in Central or MOT. That's nonsense, right? It's not possible. So that's, I mean, on that part is silent, company ordinance. Okay, so how can I, well, what can I do? I mean, in order to avoid Simon to attend the general meeting. So I know that he's a very healthy guy. He sleeps very early, right? Normally he sleeps at 10 or 11. So just, you know, an hour after dinner. Right? So how about that? Let's hold a general meeting at 3 a.m. And I know that Simon is living in, if you live in Wan Chai, right? For example, if you live in Hong Kong Island, if you live in Wan Chai. So let's hold a meeting at 3 a.m. at Tai Po or Lo Wu, right? Will be better. So 3 a.m. at Lo Wu on Sunday, right? So why I'm doing something like this? Because I want to discourage the members to attend the meeting, because I don't want you to ask any question at all, right? So that will be good. But particularly this person, right? This guy, because I know that he's a healthy guy, right? He always sleep early. So I hold a meeting at 3 a.m. and he's not going to attend. And all the other guys, they sleep very late, right? And they are all my good friends. They will not ask embarrassing questions. So can I manipulate the rules in order to discourage someone to attend the meeting? So the answer is yes or no. I mean, as a general rule, as a director, you have the right to make decisions on the time and the venue and the date, right? You have the right to do so. But if you are, I mean, you are going too far, you're obviously manipulating, and sometimes the court, they can interfere in the decision of the directors. If the meeting being arranged with the ulterior purpose to prevent a member from attending, right? Remember, ulterior purpose, hidden agenda, we call it. 有啲不可告人嘅目的, right? So ulterior purpose, bad motive, in order to prevent the members, then sometimes you can apply to the court and then to get the court orders and to fix the day, the time or location, which tend to be more reasonable, right? Another problem. So now, I mean, you have a serious concern because of the virus outbreak, right? Because of the pandemic. So we are always holding a meeting by using the internet. So sometimes you use Zoom, I don't know, normally, right? People use Zoom, sometimes you use FaceTime, you use Apple products, or use Microsoft Teams, or Google. Anyway, there are many different devices, there are many different software. So you can hold a meeting, right? In the internet. I mean, without a physical meeting. So is it possible to hold a general meeting without a physical meeting, just by electronic means, or just by using the internet? Of course, the answer is yes, absolutely, right? So you don't have to ask your lawyer, can I hold a meeting by Zoom or FaceTime or what? The company audience is silent on it. Right? The company audience is not going to have a version saying that you have to use Zoom or to use Microsoft in order to make your meeting valid, right? That's nonsense, right? There's only requirement in the company audience that you can use whatever technology, provided that when you are capable to communicate to each other and to vote effectively. So it means that it must be, it doesn't matter which software you use. The only requirement is that you have to make sure everyone using that software, they can communicate with each other. It means that it cannot be locked up, that only one person can talk or speak in that software. When you're attending an online class, that system being locked, because only the teacher, they can talk in that software, right? So sometimes the students, they cannot talk. They can only type on the screen in order to ask questions. Because there maybe the class is more than 100 students, right? If everyone can talk or speak, that will be extremely confusing, right? But that kind of restriction is not allowed to be used in a general meeting. If you want to make sure that you hold a value meeting, you have to make sure that everyone can communicate with each other and everyone can vote. It means that when someone votes, that software must enable every other participant to understand the consequence, the result of the voting, right? So how many vote for yes, how many vote for no, right? You have to be capable to show it. So if you are capable to communicate, if you are capable to show the result of your voting, that will be fine, right? Okay, so general meeting is all about voting. Then how to vote? So number one, as stated in the first paragraph, as a member, you have the right to vote. As a general rule, but always remember there are different classes of shares, right? There are different classes of shares. So if you hold preference shares, maybe some of your rights will be restricted. It means you can only vote for something, right? So you have to check. So I can't tell you, right? You have to check the articles. You have to check, the kind of shares you hold. Then exactly how to vote. There are two different ways to vote. For example, all of us, right? Everyone here, all of us are members of a company being called as Hong Kong Youth Space. Hong Kong Youth Space is a company, actually, right? It's a company. So suppose all of us are members, right, or shareholder of this company. So let's vote based on the articles or 23 that we have to cut the tuition fees for 50%, right? So, and everyone say yes. I'm the only one to say no, right? Because that's against my own interest. So, because I get paid here, right? But all of you say yes, right? So let's cut the tuition fee for 50%. Okay, say, let's vote on it, right? I write down the agenda. Let's cut the tuition fees for 50%. So let's go, how to vote? So all of you guys are members, right? How to vote? Raise your hand. All right, raise your hand. How many of you say yes, then raise your hand? How many say no? Raise your hand. And that's what we call it in law as a show of hands. Right? Because there are two different ways to vote in a general meeting. Number one is show of hands. Just show your hand, right? And then the company secretary, normally the company secretary, counts on the hand to see when more hands saying yes, then the resolution passes. When more hands saying no, then the resolution denied it, right? So that's what we call the show of hands. But sometimes that's not fair. Sometimes that's not fair because we ignore the one thing. What we ignore? Shares. We ignore the shares holding, right? For example, I'll give you another example. I don't know how many students here, right? Just assume that there are 40, right? Don't say support, right? Assume that there are 40 students. I think more than 40, right? I just assume that there are 40 students here. And Hong Kong Youth Space, this company issue 100 shares at all, right? 100 shares being issued by this company on this space. And there are 40 shares holders here. And each of you hold one share, right? Each of you hold one share. I'm also a shareholder, but I hold 60 shares, one person, 60, right? So all you guys hold 40, but each of you hold one share. For a show of hand, all of you say yes because you want to cut down tuition fees, right? So all of you say yes. So in a show of hand, so who is going to be a winner? You guys, because we ignored the shareholdings, right? We ignored the number of shares. Because I only get one hand, right? 我舉埋隻得兩隻 right? 計埋手指得意思。Even I count the fingers, I only get 10, right? I count both right hand, left hand, I only get 2 hands, right? I also count my legs 4. So it means that, right? So I'm going to be the loser. You will count the hands here. Do you think I like it? Of course I don't like it. Right? Of course I don't like it. Because I know that you will count the hands, I'm the loser, but you will count the shares, I'm going to be the winner. Even all of you disagree, because one person, I hold 60 shares, 60%, right? So, except for show of hands, we have something we call the poll voting. Right? What means by poll voting? Simple. Show of hands means we only count the hands, but we ignore the shares holding, right? We don't care. But for voting by poll, we only count the shares, but we don't count the hands, right? I don't care how many hands here. We only count for how many shares you hold, how many shares being voted for yes or no on certain topics. So under what kind of situation that we vote by show of hands? Normally, we vote by show of hands first, right? Normally, unless a poll being demanded. It means that we vote by show of hands first. If someone not happy with the consequence, then you have the right to request for a vote for poll. And that unhappy person normally is the major shareholder, right? Come on, right? It's reasonable. But the law states that every member has a right in common law to demand a poll after a show of hands. So basically everyone, right? Basically everyone can request a poll. So after a show of hands. So we vote by show of hands first. If someone is not happy, then you can request a poll, right? Normally that person is the major shareholder, but not necessarily. The right to vote by poll can be restricted. It means you can impose some restriction here, right, by your article. But you cannot exclude the right to request the vote by poll, right? You cannot exclude. 你唔可以取消呢樣嘢, right? But no matter what kind of restriction being imposed in the article, there are something. When something happens, then you must allow a poll voting. For example, the law states that when it's being requested by at least 5 members, right? When being requested by members holding 5% of shares, a very low threshold, and can be when being requested by the chairman. So all these are minimum requirements. You cannot change, right? It means you can impose restrictions. But whatever restriction you have, the rights stated here cannot be changed. All right? So what mean by proxy? Another concept we have to learn.
Sorry, the criteria is either one or all of them.
Yeah, I'm sorry, we're hurrying, right? You asked me after the class, right? Later, sorry. I don't want to overrun, sorry. You just stay here right, after class. So apart from that, another concept we have to understand is something we call a proxy. What I mean by proxy? I mean, as a member, right, you should attend a meeting. But attend a meeting is not compulsory. So sometimes when you are busy, when you don't have time, you can appoint someone to attend the meeting on behalf of you. And that person will be the proxy, right? It means the proxy is a representative of you to vote in a meeting. And that person actually is your agent. So something we learned in Lecture 1. So that's why you have to understand the law of agency, right? So a proxy means an agent appointed by a shareholder with authority to vote or even to speak up in a general meeting on behalf of you. Right? So that person represents you. So Simon can appoint Edward as an agent to attend a meeting. It always happens. Right? Sometimes the client, they appoint the lawyer as the agent to attend the general meeting in order to ask questions. The lawyer is supposed to be, more logical in company law or to ask more meaningful questions here. So you have the right to appoint any person as proxy, right? But you have to notify that person to the company in advance. Because the company is supposed, when they hold a meeting here, right, in this venue, they have a name list. They will check. It's supposed to allow the members to vote here, but not everyone, right? But not everyone. So if you want to appoint a proxy, you have to notify the company first. So sometime when you receive a notice to attend a meeting, you have another piece of paper that we call the proxy form. So there's a form. If you want to if you want to appoint a representative, then you have to fill in the form, and then you file, send it back to the company, at least say like a few days prior to the general meeting, right? Something like that. When a proxy being appointed, that person can vote on show of hands or even on a poll. In a proxy form, right, you have to specify what kind of authorization being given to that proxy, that representative. So sometimes, because you already learned about the agenda, right? Because that's a requirement law. The agenda must be stated in the notice. For example, in this meeting, is to vote on a resolution to change the name of the company. Then you can, in that proxy form, to state that my proxy, my agent, right, Simon appointed Edward as an agent to vote for yes in this resolution. Right? If you stated that in the proxy form, then I can only vote for yes. If I vote for no in a resolution, the company will ignore that. Because that is what, do you remember the law of agency, right? You are subject to the authorizations of the principal. So if you state that I have to vote for yes, then I have to vote for yes. If I vote for no, that vote will be invalid. That will be ignored by the company, right? So that is proxy. But except for a proxy, we have to learn another kind of person that we call corporate representative. What is corporate representative? So you have to think about that. A company is a separate legal entity, and a company is a legal person. Right? What I mean by legal person, it means a company can function like a human being, apart from the biological functions. So as a human being, of course, you can hold shares. It means you can be a shareholder of a company. You can be a member of a company, and so do a company. So it means a company can also be a member of another company, right? But that's only a legal fiction, it means a legal concept. The company actually is what? It's only a box of files, right? You cannot ask a box of files to vote, right? So vote, or 大公司嚟俾我公司啦 so vote. Let's vote on it, right? What is it? Right? It's a company, right? What do you want to vote? Yes or no, right? It's a company. All the files are in my bag, right? So what do you want to use? Yes or no? It's nonsense, right? It's a company physically. It's only a box of papers, right? It's only a box of documents. So a company can only be represented by a human being in order to function. So when a member is a company, and when that member won't vote, that member, meaning the company, must appoint a corporate representative. That person must be appointed to attend the meeting. Right? So Section 606 stated that a corporate member can authorize any person to be the representative in a general meeting. But something, legally speaking, which is very important, so don't mix up. Because a corporate representative is not a proxy. Well, I mean, from the operational sense, or a real sense, they are somehow the same. Because they represent someone, right? A proxy, a proxy represent another person. A corporate representative represent a company. So no matter you are a proxy or corporate representative, you represent someone. From an operational sense, yes, right? They are similar, but in law, they are not. It's a corporate representative, not proxy. So what it means? When we look at the company ordinance here, Section 606, the corporate representative can exercise the power same as the company. It's a very subtle difference here. Do you remember the proxy form, right? Do you remember the proxy form? When a proxy being appointed, that proxy works like an agent, and he can only exercise his authority to vote based on the authorization of the principal. So if the proxy form states that you have to vote for yes, then you have to vote for yes. So I have the right to check the proxy form. Because as a company, I have the right to check for the authorizations, right? If you add beyond the authorizations, your decision will be invalid. I can ignore that. But when you think about a corporate representative, we don't have such a requirement. Because a corporate representative, we only care about the appointment. We only care about the appointment. We only need to know, as a company, right? If you are the company secretary, you check for one thing. You check the authorization of this person. So normally, that will be a board resolution. It means a paper signed up by all the directors. All of them signed up to appoint Rio to be the corporate representative of ABC Limited to attend this meeting. And that's all. I only need to check the authorizations. And then you vote for yes or vote for no. So it's up to you. Because you are not a person that need to be authorized with your vote. I only need to confirm your status as being properly appointed. That will be okay. Why? Because the corporate representative, we look at certain paragraph. The corporate representative can exercise the same power as the appointing company could exercise as an individual member, right? So it means that your authority is not something being authorized. No, because you are not an agent, right? You are the company in law, right? Say, if this lady is being appointed by the company as a corporate representative, then in the general meeting, she is the company, and she is the member here. She is not agent. But of course, I mean, this is only legal concept, right? So in a real sense, both a proxy and corporate representative, they are representing, someone else. But in law, they're different, right? And you have to understand the difference here. But sometimes I ask a question in exam, right? So you have to know, all right? I don't guarantee, right, in this exam, in your exam. Okay, we have to be a little bit faster. One more thing we have to learn about is something we call a member's resolutions. We know that a member, right, or the members, they exercise their authority by voting, right? When we vote, then we count for it, no matter which is by show of hands or by poll, right? Either one, we count on it. By show of hands, we count how many hands. Vote by poll, we count how many shares, right? How many shares vote for yes and how many shares vote for no. Because all the decision finally depends on resolution, right? So we need to have a number. It means that when we want to pass a resolution, we have to attain a certain number. So what will be that numbers? Is that 25, 30, or 41, 45? No. Is the company ordinance only stated two thresholds here. Number one is auto resolution, which is 50%. Another one is special resolution, which is 75%. So it means that when you want to pass a resolution, it must be either one, right? Either auto resolution or special resolution. So we don't have any resolution which is 35 or 65 or 81, right? So there are two magic numbers here. One is 50, another one is 75, right? With that, only two kind of resolution in company ordinance, according to company law. But I can tell you that 50% is not safe. Why? But sometimes when you heard from the news, or when you read the magazine, right, regarding the financial matters, so you will always hear about that. They want to secure shareholding for 51%. So why they want to secure shareholding for 51% but not 50%? The law stated that ordinary resolution can be passed by 50%, not 51%. But why you concern about 51%? Do you understand my question here? Why 51% is the magic number, but not 50? The other side say also 50, then what happened? That law. Yes, I think you get a point, right? Both of you are correct. So that law. So if I hold 50%, and Simon hold 50%, I say yes, you say no. What will be the consequence? That law. It means that we cannot obtain ordinary resolution because another 50% saying no, right? 50% saying yes, 50% saying no. The answer is deadlock. You achieve nothing. But if you have 51%, it means that you can always pass a resolution for auto resolution. Right? You can always pass an auto resolution. Yes. So it means something. So you have to secure 3 to 1. Right? We don't have to, for special resolution, that's not required to be 7.6, right? 7.5 would be okay. Because another 25, it doesn't matter at all, right? If all of them say no, you can still pass special resolution. But for auto resolution, you have to be careful. Even if you have 50, that's not safe, right? Because when other 50 saying no, that's only deadlock. But sometimes maybe you can achieve your purpose just by having 50. If the other 50%, not all of them saying no, or some of them actually not being, they never vote at all, right? Then you will be fine. But if all of them vote for no, then you are, in the deadlock situation. So under what kind of situation that we have to vote based on auto resolutions or special resolutions? So quite simple, the logic is very simple. When we look at the first paragraph, the law states that, right, if a provision in the ordinance or in the article require a resolution to be passed, then you can presume that it is auto resolution. Right? You can presume that. So it means that anything stated in the article, anything stated in the company ordinance, required to have a resolution, then you can assume that it refers to auto resolution. It means 50%, right? A special resolution will only be required for something else. If you want to have a special resolution, then you have to state that you want a special resolution. So otherwise, right? Otherwise, that will be presumed that you're only looking for auto resolution. So the logic is very simple, right? You just state that something need to be passed by resolution, then that will be presumed to be auto resolution. If you want that thing to be approved by special resolution, then you have to state that clearly, special resolution. Right? Very simple. Right? Okay. Something very interesting before we end the class today. You may answer questions. It seems there are a lot of formalities that we have to fulfill. But you have to be realistic. I told you already, there are more than 93% of the companies incorporated in Hong Kong belong to private company limited by shares. And I give you another statistics. For all the 93% of the private company limited by shares, almost 80% of them are having less than 10 members. It means most of the companies in Hong Kong, they are only having a few members, 3 or 4. Or a lot more than 10, right? Okay. So you think about companies with only a few members, and maybe most of them are family members. Well, that's possible. Or most of them are partners. I mean, not in a partnership means they work together for a long time, or good friends. So sometimes, the 3 members, for example, there are 3 members, right? In ABC Limited, A, B, and C, 3 members. Because they are good friends. They are always having lunch together. They are always having dinner together, right? They are always together. You think about that. One evening, when they are having dinner in Mong Kok, when they are having a hot pot, right? Bambino, 3 guys, right? Samo Malo, 3 guys here, and they are having a hot pot. They think about something suddenly. Right? So how about we change the name of the company? The ABC company is no good. Our company is always losing money. So how about we change the name to BBB Company, right? Or Golden Egg Company, right? 金蛋公司, or Super Rich Company, right? Or just we change the name of company as Li Ka-shing, or Jack Ma, or Jack Ma. So that would be good, right? Yeah, they are wealthy businessmen. And they all of them decide on it. And all of them are members. But they are not in a meeting. They are in a dinner. They are having a hot pot. So do you think that kind of decisions will be valid as a resolution being properly passed? The answer is yes. All right? Because if you can still recall a very important principle in common law, form and substance, you care about substance, but not the form. It means you care about what really happened, but not just the formalities. So we have a case law, right? I call the judgment here. So very interesting. With the court held that when all the shareholders who have the right to attend the general meetings, they are sent to something, means they agree on something, which the general meeting can be carried into effect. That essence will be as binding as a resolution passed in general meeting. It means that when they agreed on something, right, something that can be passed as a resolution, but they agreed on that thing not in the general meeting, but on some other occasion, that decision shall be valid. But the requirement is that all shareholders, right, all of them, not 99%, not 99.9%, but everyone. But that's very important requirement. You have to make sure that everyone is here. So when everyone is here and they agree on something, even they are not actually having a general meeting, right? But if they agree on something, that thing can also be treated as a valid resolution passed in general meeting, because we care about substance, not the form. The last page. The last page. Something like that. All right. Last thing. When you hold a meeting, remember, there are a lot of formalities you have to follow. It means procedural matters. So we have to serve a notice. When you serve a notice, we have to follow the time requirements. 21 days, 14 days, 7 days, right? When you serve a notice, you have to include the agenda. It means the topics that will be discussed. And also you have to serve the notice to every related parties. It means all the members, directors, and sometimes even for the auditors. And I want to ask you questions. So how about something wrong in the procedures? For example, if I fail to send a notice to some members, or I send a notice to the wrong address, or the proxy form wrongly returned it, or any other procedural errors, do you think that if something wrong regarding the procedures, then the resolution passed will become invalid? Yes or no? The same principle here as the unanimous decisions, right? For unanimous decisions, it means that we care about the substance, but not the form. We care about the real things, but not the superficial. So that same principle also applies regarding procedural irregularities. Sometimes even something wrong, some error in the procedure, but the resolution may still be valid, right? So how to make decisions? The company ordinance does not deal with procedural irregularities. It means the company ordinance itself is silent, right? It's silent regarding procedural irregularities. We have to look for common law case. So let's take a look at the authority. All right, this is the last page before we end the class. So what happened in this case? Interesting, right? Several resolutions being passed in a general meeting by the majority. As I remember, 3 different resolutions, right, passed in this meeting, already passed. Passed as order resolution. How to pass an order resolution? 50%. No, 50% order resolution, right? So how to pass an order resolution? 50%. So 3 order resolutions being passed here. So it means already more than 50, right? Already more than 50. It means that, for example, right, as I remember, so all the resolutions being passed with approval of around 80%, right? But the law only requires 50%. But all the resolutions already passed with 80%. Okay. But one of the members wanted to apply to the court, wanted to apply for a court order to invalidate the resolution by arguing that something wrong with the procedures because he was missed in a notice. It means that he didn't know the notice. He didn't know the meeting, right? Because no one notified him for the meeting. He missed the meeting. So he wanted to apply to the court for a court order to hold the meeting again by arguing on procedural irregularities, right? I have the right as a member. I'm a member, so I have the right to attend meeting. So you missed my notice. to my right being infringed. So that's not fair. And the resolution passed it. They were not valid. So I want to hold another meeting. So the judgment will be, very interesting, right? And quite brilliant. The court have recognized the problem. Yes, the court agreed with the applicant. Yes, I know that, right? But the view of the majority were clear. It might be meaningless for the court to declare the resolution invalid, and then to hold a meeting again that the same outcome will happen. So think about the meeting again. 3 resolutions being passed as order resolution. As order resolution, only 50% will be required. And order resolution being passed over 80%. This guy hold 5% only, right? So no matter he attend the meeting or not, the result will be what? The same, right? So even there are some procedural irregularities, it means something wrong regarding procedures. But the point is, the result will be, the outcome will be exactly the same. So that will be a waste of time to hold a meeting again. But, right? But, if the resolution passed in this meeting is 75%, right? If this meeting want to pass the special resolutions, and I hold 40%, right? And whether I attend the meeting or not, will have great influence to the outcome. Because I hold 40%, remember, right? If I attend a meeting, then probably this resolution can be passed. But if I miss the meeting, you can never pass such a resolution. Because I hold 40%, right? It means all the shareholders, they only hold 60. So when 60% attend a meeting, even all of them vote for yes, you cannot pass special resolution. So if you miss a major shareholder for 70%, sorry, 40%, then the outcome will be, completely different. So the point is, if there's a procedural error, can you apply a court order to hold another meeting? There's one single deciding factor, and that is the outcome. If that procedural error will have impact to the final outcome, then you can apply a court order to hold the meeting again. If that procedural error will have nothing to do with the final outcome, then that error, even being recognized by the court, will be ignored. All right? Okay, that's all for today, right? So see you again on Thursday. Sorry, 有位同學有嘢問我。計人 physical 嗰啲人，quorum 計人 quorum 係計個應該 physical attendance 應該計 physical attendance， 即係計你有幾多個人頭出現，係計你幾多人，即係同你我帶 carry 幾多車，係幾多人頭，但係因為你個人頭都可能會影響到個 shareholding， 因為 depends on 啲人 hold 幾多，即係譬如我一個人都可以 hold 40噶嘛，咁變咗我一個人唔出。我都可以令到你永遠 pass 唔到一個 special 但嗰個唔係人係人。另外一個就係我見到啲公司咧開會咧，尤其是 AH 全部啲公司咧，喺北京開嘅。哦，唔同。咁嗰啲點樣搞啊？嗰個係上市公司。第一，你嗰啲係上市公司，上市公司個 law 唔係完全一樣。第二，上市公司好多根本唔係香港公司。我咪講過，上市公司唔係香港公司嚟嘅。譬如你好多 H 股嗰啲係國企嚟㗎嘛。A 股係民企嚟嘅。譬如你我講 AIA 係亞務大公司，都唔係香港公司嚟。所以唔關事。我講嘅香港公司。嗰個攞唔上市公司係另一賣得㗎，就另一樣嘢嚟㗎。上市公司完全另一樣。
我想請問咧，咪有唔同 process of share 嘅？咁譬如佢個公司有 issue 咗美元嘅 ordinary share， 係譬如
美元 ordinary share，
跟住有港元，跟住但又唔同價錢，但係個 vote 係個 right 係一樣，咁到時計即係譬如如果要，
我明。嗱，如果你計佢做唔同嘅 class of shares 咧，佢係講個 right， 個 law 就冇話係個 issue price 唔同，即係佢冇話因為你係用美元法或者用港元法，就等於你變咗唔同客，佢淨係個 right 唔同咧，你就唔同。咁
你總之係乜嘢 right 唔同咧？只要你唔同咧，咁你應該都係唔同 pass。只要你嘅權利有嘢唔同，就應該係唔同。
咁到時如果係即係投票係賣個 shareholder 嘅 percentage，咁係咪即係都唔關事，都係照計翻佢本身前嗰個？咁如果佢係 issue 5蚊嘅 par value 或者3蚊嘅，
個 par value 同佢 issue price 同佢 right 冇關。即係我 issue 俾你，同 issue 俾佢，個 right 一樣，但我 issue 俾你5蚊，我 issue 俾你10蚊，你都係同一種 share，同一個 class of share。因為個 law 講係同一種 right 就係同一種 share，佢唔係講唔同嘅 price 就係唔同嘅 kind of share， 佢係講個 right 啫。即係你兩個嘅 share 嘅權力係一樣，你就係 hold 緊同一種 share 喺個 law 裏面。我 issue 俾你係用唔同嘅價錢，或者用港元同美元，冇佢個 law 冇講話呢個有關。
如果我係港幣5蚊，佢係港幣3蚊，跟住我哋落係100股，咁投票嗰陣係，即係
咪就照咁投，咪照你個 right 一樣。
你買幾錢嘅？
佢即係唔關你買，即係你買幾多錢係同你 right 係冇關。issue 俾你個 right 你最後投嗰個票嘅 right 咪睇你持股幾多？你係持3%，咁你咪有3%煲落去咁樣。如果係敗煲，如果你係敗咗個 plan 就照計手咁樣。你如果佢哋唔殺你，
自己嚟間公司成日都見到 nominee shareholder， 其實即係
nominee shareholder， 即係話你嗰啲叫 declaration of trust 啊嘛 ，DT 啊嘛，係嘛？即係話其實嗰個人我 hold 住，譬如我有啲 share， 我唔想俾你睇到我名嘅，但係我嘅，但我唔想俾人知我名，因為你記住你 hold 咗香港公司或者 hold 公司個 register 睇到你個名㗎嘛，但我唔想你睇到，但我又想 hold share， 咁我叫你喂你 hold 晒。你 hold 晒 share 先，我俾錢你買晒 share， 用你個名登記。但係你簽翻份嘢俾我，就話其實你 declare 你係 for 我 hold 嘅啫。咁我就有權去攞翻你啲 share 咁解。嗰個就叫 DT， 或者叫 nominee。你咪叫 nominee 咯。我俾錢叫你用你個名買 share， 你咪叫 nominee。或者嗰份嘢叫 declaration of trust 嘅 DT。
我想問咧，如果係同一個人又可以係 proxy， 又可以係 member， 又可以係 corporate。
同一個人可以係 proxy，
即係佢可能有第二個人
可以
忽你，
可以，譬如有兩個 member， 你可以我個 friend， 佢係我個 friend， 佢係 member， 佢唔得閒，佢 appoint 埋我係 proxy 得，可以。
咁我又係一個即係 company 嘅 rep
都得
做，咁
除非你 article 話唔得，個 law 冇話唔得。
咁我一個人嘅時候，我投其實都係投一票嘅啫。
唔係，你有唔同嘅身份去 count， 即係譬如你同一時間你又係你又係 proxy， 你又係 corporate representative， 咁你就投3次。你係我嗰陣時，我係我嗰陣時我就咁投，我係代表佢時就咁投，我係代表公司就咁投。
因為嗰啲 show of hands 嘅話，其實
show of hand 就show of hand 嘅話就一碌，但係睇 article 可以改。show of hand 嘅話你只可以一個，即係你變唔到身出嚟。如果 show of hand 嘅話就淨係計你一個，即係你得一個身份可以做呢樣嘢。你一係你就係 proxy， 一係 corporate representative， 一係你自己，除非 article 裏面有特別嘢講出嚟。
或者佢行 po。或者
鋪就梗係得啦，鋪當然得嚇，鋪可以計你 show of hand 你點？
咁唔可以一個人 represent 幾間公司或者幾個人
show of hand 唔可以同一時間，因為你冇可能計到出嚟點樣計，你只可以用一個身份，除非你 article 裏面有啲好特別嘅嘢寫出嚟。
但如果佢可能第一次，即係可能佢係用佢自己嘅身份嚟對投，跟住好啦，到第二次嘅時候，佢係用 proxy 嘅身份嚟對投，咁樣 show of hands 得唔得？唔得。
個 law 就係話 show of hands 就係一次。一隻手舉出嚟，呢個係個 rule 係。但係 proxy 係可以計到冇所謂 ，proxy 計出嚟，唔係鋪係計出嚟嘅嘛，冇問題嘅。但係 show of hands 只一次一隻手，你點可以？你點樣做？佢唔可以係幾次㗎嘛？佢唔可以 count 過我3次，跟住有唔同人唔同身份，你第3次去數，佢冇呢個 procedure 做，佢只係一次過叫所有人舉隻手出嚟。咁你同一時間有3個身份，你點樣去解決到你嗰個大 dilemma？解決唔到，所以佢只可以計你一隻。
另外我想問咧，即係如果假設好似頭先佢咁樣講，咁我既係我代表我自己，我亦都係個 proxy 嘅時候，咁假設如果個立場上邊我同我
個 proxy 有
衝突，
冇關係，完全冇關係，冇關係。你如果你敗鋪有乜問題？你即係照坑啫嘛，我5% 就 say yes， 佢嗰10% say no， 你咪照寫出嚟。
咁但係如果即係事實上，即係可能假設我咁樣計啦，我有私心，跟住我個 proxy 同我嘅立場唔一樣，但係我因為代表佢嘛，我用咗佢嘅嗰啲票嚟到去。
嗱，第一個 proxy form 會寫出嚟嘅。如果個 proxy form 寫出嚟，你投出嚟係同佢唔同咧，嗰公司知道咧，你嗰票係廢票嚟。
明白。
唔知咁我當然唔知啦，即係如果佢搞錯佢唔知咁冇得講啊，即係你犯法，但係佢唔知咁梗係冇嘢，嘥人唔知都冇事啦，係咪先？但係唔得咯，即係我只係話知道就唔得咯，同埋嗰個編程可以告你，因為 based on agency law。
直頭係可以告。
佢可以告你，因為你違反咗我俾你 instruction，你係我 agent 嚟啫嘛。咁樣。
明白。
OK， 好，下一位。
share 唔同 share 嗰啲 rights 係會寫喺 article。
係，通常寫 article。有陣時會寫埋會喺你買賣嗰份，你有陣時你同間公司買股票，有陣時你會另外 separate 一份 contract side， 有陣時嗰份 contract 都會寫咗。即係你如果有你就兩樣都睇，冇就淨係睇 article。真係乜嘢都唔寫就咁咧，就會跟我頭先講嘅分。即係有陣時你可能真係冇寫到出嚟，你可能冇寫，有啲嘢冇寫，你整咗種 parent share 出嚟，但你又冇 define 到，或者個 definition 同 article 嗰個好似唔吻合嘅 case，咁佢就會用 general 個 court 就會用一般嚟講，我哋點理解 parent share 去理解你嘅 right。
咁 AGM 嗰啲係咪適用於 every company？ 即係如果係一人公司都要開 AGM 喎？
你可以 waive， 我咪講100%。100%。係啊。
因為我覺得100%嘅時候就已經可以，我自己打邊爐自己可以決定啦，係咪？
唔係即係你其實
但係 annual general meeting 唔係一定要開。
唔係有一個情況可以 waive，但我冇講。
OK。
我冇講，因為 cover 即係我 CBA 冇 cover 嚇，但係其實可以 waive 嘅。如果你係 one man 嘅話就嚇，但係你當佢呢個唔係 sorry， 呢個新聞。
咁一定係 show of hand， 然後先至係鋪，即係點都有機會俾佢哋啲細股東
因為嗰個嗱一般嚟講個 procedure 咧都係 show of hand 先嘅。咁除非你個 article 裏面講啲特別嘅嘢，話又係任何情況下我都要大鋪嘅可以。因為個 law 冇講話一定要擺 show of hand， 我只係話一般個 procedure 佢講咗，但係個 law 只係講話如果你有 show of hand 之後有人唔 happy， 你就可以 request 擺鋪。呢個就係個 law 講咗。但係你可以寫話我一定要擺鋪都得，個 law 冇話唔可以咁。
咁佢個 voting right 呢度係咪全部都係講緊股份？即係有時有啲association 佢係講緊會員，唔係 shareholder， 咁嗰啲 voting right
當然係講 shareholder 啦。
淨係講有錢。
一定係講 shareholder， 但係佢講嗰個點解佢會講 voting right 呢個字咧？因為有一啲情況係某一啲會員先可以 vote。咁如果某啲會員可以 vote 嗰時咧，譬如我哋呢度所有 member 都係 shareholders 嚟嘅，但係得你同我可以 vote on dividends 咧，咁我哋就淨係計你同我㗎咋。咁佢哋其他票全部會唔計，就咁計你同我㗎咋。咁然後再計個 percentage 出嚟。
如果 for electronic 嘅，淨係一定要 make sure 可以 vote 到。咁
即係 make sure 可以，佢嗰個系統係可以，大家睇到嘅。譬如你 show of hand 真係睇到你手嘅，咁然後有 count 到嘅，咁就會喺度攞。
但可唔可以作為一間公司，我做佢其中 special proxy 而唔俾佢睇嗰個？